This month on Artifacts, film and video from the heart, a theater artist turned theologian, a curator on the art of the Northern Plains, and young people singing, all on the last edition of Artifacts for 1998.
Hello everybody, I'm Janet Zahn.
And I'm Phill Lindsay.
And you're watching Artifacts, the show that brings the arts in Minneapolis home to you.
Now, you know, we started a bit of a tradition on Artifacts. Every year, our December show is based on the theme of arts and spirituality.
And wherever that theme takes us, well, that's where we go. Beginning with my first guest, who will be here to talk about producing film and video from the heart. Every year, Minnesota's production industry generously donates an incredible amount of time, talent, and energy to public service projects. Lucinda Winter of Blue Earth Pictures and director-cameraman David Moe will tell us about projects they've worked on, and we'll also have some great examples of public service announcements running throughout the show.
Well, then we'll stand at the intersection of theater arts and spirituality with my next guest, Jaime Meyer. Many of you may remember Jaime from his groundbreaking work with Quicksilver Productions and with his work with the Hmong theater community. But you may not know that he's now studying for a theology degree. We'll find out more about Jaime's current chosen path.
Next, Phill speaks with Joe Horscapture, who is assistant curator in the Africa, Oceania, and the Americas departments at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. You'll hear a lot about art of the Northern Plains.
And then we're pleased to welcome members of the Youth Performance Company who will be bringing us Turkish Delight,
which is a song from their holiday offering, Narnia, a musical based on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis.
Plus the usual giveaway, the events calendar, and the unusual, including a list of every guest who appeared on our show in 1998, and a tribute to the late, great Robert Kilbride.
Television worth watching.
So let's get to it. Janet will be back with her first guest, David Moe and Lucinda Winter,
right after this public service announcement.
And here, I have 19 of them here. I pierced my body because it's mine.
I started out here,
Pierced here. 2 on my tongue.
And here, these done right here.
And I have a labret, a Monroe.
here,
Right here.
here.
And here.
If body piercing bothers you, imagine having to do it 4 times a day just to stay alive. Help us find the cure for juvenile diabetes.
And that public service announcement for childhood diabetes was created by one of my guests, David Moe, for an agency called Curator and Associates. And I also would like to welcome Lucinda Winter here from Blue Earth Pictures. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Janet.
We're going to talk today about public service announcements and projects and the generosity of the film industry in Minnesota. I want to start out by mentioning some statistics, actually. In the 1995 Economic Impact Study of the Minnesota film and video industry, 85% of the respondents took on pro bono or charitable projects for clients, donating more than $4 million in production services. It's a very, very generous amount. And I guess I'd like to start by asking you why people are so willing to donate so much time and energy to projects like this. Either one of you can
money.
start. And money, yeah.
Yeah. Dave, why don't you go?
Well, I think people are, as an artist or a filmmaker, you're looking for something that's going to make a difference, perhaps. And I think a lot of times I work primarily in commercial production, and we're trying to make the consumer's life easier and better. But then a project comes along, and it's like, you know, that could make a difference. And it's just that little piece that just being able to make a difference. You know?
How did the childhood diabetes spot make a difference? Do you know?
Well, first of all, it was kind of interesting because when I was approached to do the job, that very day, my mother was diagnosed with diabetes, and it just really hit home. So there was no question I was going to do this job, and I wanted to do a good job of it. It was very fascinating because then I was asking crew members and the editor and if they knew people who were diabetic, and everybody knew, at least family member, friend, whatever, and it just, everybody was very involved with the project. Even the bohemian pierced young folks we had were very much into it, and the little girl at the end just kind of fell in love with them, and they ensued. So
A lot of good energy.
yeah,
in those
right.
projects.
It's just right.
Lucinda, why do you take on those kinds of projects?
I think there's probably really two reasons. One is because it gives you, sometimes when you take on a pro bono project, it allows you to work with people you normally don't get to work with, and ask if there's somebody out there, a shooter or a sound person that I've been dying to work with, but it hasn't, the fit hasn't been right. I might approach them and say, hey, let's try this together and see how it goes. That's one of the reasons. For me, probably that's the biggest, the creative freedom. It allows you the chance to work with some really good people that you've had your eye on working with before. And also just because I think the community's been very good to me in my professional life, and I really believe it is a good thing to give back. There's a lot of satisfaction you get from that you can't get any other way.
We have a piece that you did from the Red Cross. I'd like to show our viewers that to give them a little bit of an idea of that project. Do you want to set it up a little bit, how this came about?
Sure. The reason that I did the Red Cross project was because, for one thing, I'm on their board of directors, and I have been for 10 years. And so I know the Red Cross inside and out, and I know what they do. Their biggest problem is a perception problem. Nobody really knows, or very few people know, the range of services that the Red Cross provides. And some people even are under the mistaken impression that somehow the government gives the Red Cross money, or they're funded somehow through the government. Totally untrue. And so I wanted to do a piece for them that they could use to show to people, show to the public what they're all about and what they do for people. And it was just a good opportunity to use my skills, my professional skills, to help them out.
Why don't we roll the tape and take a look?
Still probably be at rock bottom, trying to make up for everything that I lost.
We had families come in who were literally living in the shells of their houses.
I think I would have been kind of lost. I wouldn't know where to go, what to do.
Earthquakes and hurricanes, house fires and floods. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain. No disaster is small when it happens to you.
Very nice, Lucinda. Nice work. And you chose to work with the Red Cross because you're on the board, but you try and generally work with one pro bono client?
Yeah, we, like everybody in town, and I'm sure, Dave can attest to this, you get approached by a lot of people, and they want everything from, can you tape my daughter's wedding, to, we're running a conference, and can you just be in the back so we can record it? And what we've kind of decided to do is just pick one agency that we really believe in and put our focus, our money and our time and our energy into that agency. And for us, it is the Red Cross. Although we started pro bono with another, with Groves Academy. But we've just decided that way we can truthfully say to people, you know what, I can't do that for you because we've chosen the Red Cross as our pro bono partner. But at the same time then, because I know them so well and I've worked with them before, we can really figure out how we can efficiently help them with their communications needs.
David, how do projects come to you and how do you choose them?
A lot of people a lot of projects come to you. How do you choose them? That's a good question. Usually I also, like Lucinda was talking about crew and how you fit. I mean, I think also agencies, if they don't know you, they might be saying, have you done this kind of work? And depending on what the cause is, you might be a good fit or not, or otherwise. So when I'm approached, I kind of think about that, what can I do to help produce this project, to make it the best it can be, so that both parties are going to, get something out of it.
Right.
So.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you know what it is? Just to tag onto that, I think what's interesting about them is sometimes a pro bono project will force you to think creatively and on the cheap, whereas you might not have to do that at some other time. You know what I mean?
I work actually surprisingly well under those circumstances. I kind of like the idea of you know, we have nothing for you. What can you do with this?
Exactly.
And I find it, you know, really rewarding to do that.
It's a real challenge, and really what you usually end up finding out is that a lot of times if you have to, you can do some really great stuff with very little except what talent everybody brings to bear and your bare essentials, you know, buying your film or tape or whatever. And that people really are willing to help you out. As long as I think it has to be clear that everybody on the project is in the same boat. Nobody's getting paid, and everybody's donation is the same. We're all coming to this, you know.
Right. So if I were a person that was in charge of a charitable organization, what do I need to prepare when I go to some really good filmmakers like yourselves, and I want a decent project here, but I don't have the cash? How should I approach you? What would you like to hear from me?
Just an honest approach of, you know, as much information as you have as to what your goal is with the project, you know, what your total, if you have any money whatsoever, what that is, what your expectations are. And, you know, it's all on communication at that point, because it's like with the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, there was no question I was going to do it. You know, I mean, it was just I had to do it. It was something very close to me at that moment, and I think it's just, you know, between the two parties, just communicating. It has to be just upfront.
And I think too, you want to be pitched a little bit, you want to be sold a little bit, because, you know, there are so many worthwhile organizations in town who desperately need communications help. And I think it's like any other pitch that you might make for a grant or anything else. Why should I do this for you? And do you have a clear idea of what you need to get out of it? I think that really helps. You need to know, well, what do you want from this? What's your objective? Who are we going to be talking to? How are we going to touch them? And I think the more information you can provide of that nature, and also, are you going to trust me to do this?
Yes.
Once you give me this project, I think part of the, you know, the kick you get is, hey, I want to take this and run with it. And I think I'm a little bit less willing to put up with being micromanaged on a pro bono project. I don't know about you, but
that's why you have to be up communication, you know, lay down everything and then work from there.
Generally, do you cost them out the same way? How do you work with? Do you work differently in terms of how
well, you have to be very creative, not only with your storytelling and imagery, you have to be creative with your money. So, I mean, you have to know what you can and can't do right off the bat. Then, it's basically a real stripped down budget, but pretty much you work under the same, you have to budget.
Do you end up usually covering hard costs? Is the client responsible for that, or sometimes not?
I've never asked a client to cover me on hard costs. I've figured that you know, that's a donation that we are making, and then the time and energy and equipment and stuff, that's all part of the package for me.
I think we are out of time. I knew this was going to go very quickly, but I really appreciate you both being here. We're going to see a couple more pieces of yours later in the show. Thank you for bringing your work in, and thanks for the good work you do.
Thanks for having us, Jen.
You bet.
Thanks.
Phill and I will be back to bring you some arts news headlines, but first, here's a segment from another pro bono project produced by Lee Pictures for the Minnesota Equestrian Foundation.
The horse offers a challenge for the child that they can meet both physically and emotionally. They may have never had control of anything in their life, but they can get on a horse and have some sense of control. So it brings a lot of confidence and self-assurance to a child that through other means may not have been able to achieve that.
Are you ready, Alex?
Yep.
You ready?
Yep.
Sure?
Yep.
Okay, then we'll walk too. We'll get Mosby up there. Alex is really an exception. What we're planning to accomplish with kids is therapy. If through whatever goes on, they can go beyond that, that's wonderful, and we're all for that. We'd like to see it. I'd love to see every kid out there ride. Just take off across the field and go. But it ain't gonna happen. So We set our goals per child, and that's all we can do. All right, here we go.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, are you ready? Let's get some stretching going.
Walk on.
Alex, way up. High as you can reach, walk that horse on.
When I've been out here on the evenings that the kids have ridden, they come in their wheelchairs. Obviously, they can't walk. You put them on top of the horses, and you can just see their faces, and almost their whole bodies get happy. The smiles, the enthusiasm, their attitude.
If success is based on our viability as an organization, we're very successful. We have so many people that want to be in this program that we're looking for space and instructors all the time. We have a waiting list that, in my mind, is unbelievable. I mean, there shouldn't need to be a waiting list that long. But because of limits of instructors, of limits in, well, basically, let's call it funding, we don't have the time, the space, or the facilities to do what we could do.
Now again, you just saw a portion of a fundraising video that was produced for the We Can Ride program of the Minnesota Equestrian Foundation. The producer was Gene Canton, director and editor was Lee Canton, director of photography Darren Lazar, and post-production was by the Junton Media Group. All that production service was donated for this project.
By the way, if you want to know more about the We Can Ride program, call 473-2212. And now, it's time for the Arts News with arts anchors Phill, Lindsay, and yours truly.
Well, there's a new art gallery in the Minneapolis Warehouse District. The Inside Out Art Gallery features paintings, drawings, and sculptures by artists associated with the Interact Center for the Visual and Performing Arts. The work represented is described by the center as outsider art, basically done by artists unshaped by academic training. The Inside Out Art Gallery is located at 212 3rd Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse District.
As the 4 major television networks are planning to launch high-definition television images this month, the Minnesota Association of Independent Commercial Producers is preparing for an important conference on HD TV that will be held on Tuesday, December 15th from 8 o'clock until noon at the Minneapolis Hilton. Keynote speaker is Mark Shubin, one of the foremost experts on digital television in the country. It will be a non-technical seminar that will also feature product demonstrations. For more information, call the Minneapolis Office of Film, Video, and Recording.
And cultural facility development continues apace in Minneapolis. 3 venerable organizations will turn a vacant warehouse on Washington Avenue South into the Minnesota Book and Literary Arts Building. Milkweed Editions, the Loft Literary Center, and the Minnesota Center for Book Arts will anchor the facility at 1011 Washington Avenue South. The groups intend to rent space to other literary organizations and possibly a bookstore. After a $5.5 million renovation, occupancy is expected in 2 years. And that's the Artifacts News for December.
Good afternoon. If you like a white wine, I would recommend Pennington Vineyards. It's a very smooth, dry wine with notes of pear, honey, and spices. These delightful flavors blend perfectly on the palate until you realize drinking while you're pregnant increases the risk that your child may have physical abnormalities, learning disabilities, or mental retardation.
You know, just some water, thanks.
To learn more, call 1-800-KIDS-709.
Now, the PSA you just saw in Fetal Alcohol Syndrome was directed by Rye Martin. Executive producer was Ridge Henderson. Producer was Marie Domingo, and the advertising agency was Initio. More than 40 individuals and 15 vendors contributed to this project. Now, my next guest is Jaime Meyer, a man I've known, actually, I think I knew you. You were wearing tights out at a Renaissance festival somewhere.
Thanks for saying
Jaime,
that.
It's nice to have you here. And as we mentioned at the top of our show, in December on Artifacts, we tend to try and talk with people and talk about projects where the intersection of the arts and spirituality come in. Now, folks may know you from a fairly long history of theatrical work, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But now, lately, you've entered into a theology program. And where are you taking that course of study?
At United Seminary, United Theological Seminary up in New Brighton. They have a great program. You know, seminaries are to train ordained ministers, but they have another program there about theology and the arts that attracted me there.
And when I first heard that, I thought this has got to be somewhat unusual. I mean, are there a lot of seminaries that...
I don't think so. I think it's highly unusual, and for that reason, it's just great. It's great to have it here in our city.
Well, now, why in your case, because I've known you, I don't know, 15, 20 years, theater, Quicksilver Productions, SAC Theater, you've worked in the Hmong theater community, you've had great success in that. What, was there something inside Jaime Meyer that said, I got to find God? Or I got to find the theological seminary?
I came to a realization, I think, in my playwriting, really a long time ago, that all I was interested in writing about were things, I wasn't interested in political topics, I wasn't interested in kind of current events, kind of things that a lot of writers are interested in. I was really interested in spiritual themes, and that just became so present in my writing. And at a certain point, I think I realized that I wanted to get some formal training, formal study in that area to deepen my writing. You know, you can sit and write all you want about the stuff you believe or how you think the world works or the cosmos works or something. But I think I came to a point where I thought, you know, I'll write the same play over and over and over until I get some substance. I wanted to get some theological substance and formal academic substance.
Is some of this coming into your writing now already?
Oh, absolutely. It's the most amazing thing. Not in a direct way that, you know, not like, oh, I'm going to write my next play on St. Augustine of Hippo or something, you know, but it's more like just I'll be writing something and I'll realize that I'll be constructing a scene, and at some point I realized, wow, this has been informed by some classes I've had, and I would have never had this whole scene constructed like this if I hadn't had this academic training. And that's been a great pleasure to realize that it's not a direct thing, but it's just seeping in like water seeping up from underground.
Right. It sounds like a grounding, partly intellectual. I mean, you're just learning things.
Sure.
Yeah, but is there also kind of a spiritual element to it where you're getting some insight into things that maybe you thought or you felt before and now
well, you know, it's not even, I think what that program and going to seminary has been teaching me, a lot of it is academic and facts and history and things like that. That's all great. But so much of it is being in a community of people who are all kind of like seekers after the divine, and a community that's wildly diverse. I mean, there's people who are lifelong devoted church members. There's people who, on maybe the other end of the spectrum, who maybe call themselves congenial heathens, which I like.
But at this seminary.
At the same school. And I can't imagine another seminary being so diverse, and I think that's one of the strengths of United. So, you know, I'll be in a room with people with really wildly different theologies, but they're all getting together and we're able to talk. And that community of seekers has been more nourishing to me, I think, maybe than even the academic study itself.
Fascinating.
So it's really turned me on to the idea of community, of what it means to be a member of a community that has a lot of diversity in it, but still you're a member. Because so much of art making is solitary, and so much of I think the myth of the artist that we carry with us is the artist as on the outside of the action, looking in, and the lonely person and the person who has a lot of pain and suffering in them, and their work is solitary, and no one understands them, and things like that. And that's all true in a lot of cases, but I think that the American myth of the artist is sometimes destructive to community.
And that's essentially the old romantic view of the artist is sort of separate from not only community but the audience as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I feel like what's happened in my art form in theater is that the artists, the playwrights, have abandoned the audience because we don't have a sense of community. So we write these things. Nobody comes to see it because we're not caring about them, and then we complain that nobody comes to see our work.
Right. And you're talking about the kind of more conventional theater today, as it were. Yeah. Now, I must say, though, that knowing some of the work you've done somewhat recently with the Hmong theater, you've never not gotten involved with the people that are informing your art. Now, can you talk a little bit about your experience in that community? Was there any element of spirituality that you either took into that yourself or brought out of it from your experience with that community?
Well, a lot of the reason I was interested, there's a lot of reasons I was interested in the Hmong community, but one reason connected to spirituality was I've studied tribal shamanism for a long, long time. It's just been something that's always interested me, that theology that's so different from American kind of monotheistic theology. And so I was really interested in that, among many other things in the Hmong theater. I've always thought the theater itself is a very shamanic, ritualistic art form. That's what I've always really liked about it. And so I can't say that, you know, I became an expert in Hmong shamanism, but I did learn things. I was very grateful to my Hmong partners for being open with me when I asked questions and things like that.
Well, not too many years back, as I recall, you got down into Southeast Asia and took a trip.
I backpacked through Thailand and Laos and Vietnam for about 2 months.
And a few of us weren't sure we'd see you again. I mean, did you? I mean, just because times are tough down there, and,
Sure.
and they certainly were then. And some of those, political upheaval.
Yeah, well, you know, when I flew into Bangkok, and there was this huge arts festival in Bangkok that week, and it was the greatest thing. Everyone from all over Thailand were coming to present shows and stuff. Right in the middle of the festival, there was a military coup. I mean, the military took over Bangkok, and so I'm standing there with my little, backpack on, and the streets are lined with that rolled barbed wire and guys with guns and people, chanting on the other side, whoa, 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 something in Thai. And but the most amazing thing was, because I wasn't Thai and I was this tall white American, I could walk through it and nobody cared about me because I wasn't part of the problem or the solution. And so I remember trying to cross a big street, a line of guys with rifles here and a line of shouting demonstrators over here, and I wanted to get over to there. And I went up to the guard and I asked him kind of very stumbling Thai, can I cross here? And he was like, yeah, no problem. And, and here's this very tense situation. So I walked across the street and it was the most amazing experience to be in the middle of something and not involved at all.
I'm going to try and remember that in case there's ever a big upheaval here.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and look like a Thai person trying to cross the street or something.
Yeah.
I'll be anybody but here. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, it was an amazing
Did you ever put any of that experience or your whole backpacking trip into one of your theater pieces?
Again, not directly. Maybe that's something that, in the next few years as I write other things, maybe I tend to be very, very slow. My experiences tend to go underground for a long time and then come up 15 or 20 years later in my writing. So maybe later. Although with my work with the Hmong theater, that kind of feeling of being the stranger in town, of being the person who no one really gave a second thought to in a certain way, that was very informative because I think that's the Hmong experience. So I think in a certain way my trip to Southeast Asia helped inform, not at all completely, but helped inform my sense of being the person who was marginalized. But again, in a limited way.
Going back to the seminary where you're studying, are you, because I know you're a theater writer, a theater person, you write and you care about what goes on stage. Are you informed, are you inspired at all by folks that work in other disciplines, such as the visual arts and things like that? I'm guessing that there must be slideshows of religious art or sculpture and things like that. Does that come into your life now?
Yeah, but I'm inspired by those art forms, but I'm more terrified by them because I don't understand them a lot.
It's a different vernacular.
Yeah. And I'm always amazed at people that work in other art forms. I have found, for me, theater has been a very easy art form. It's like my natural voice. But when I see somebody painting or dancing just terrifies me.
Yeah, even though it's a performing art. You're a performer.
And I've written stuff that I've wanted to have dancing in it and stuff like that. And I probably will move that way more. I like the collaborative kind of things. But those art forms kind of scare me because they're so incredibly cool.
Well, we've got just a moment left. I just wanted to ask any current projects that sometime in the near future we might see of yours. What are you working on these days?
Well, actually, I'm a play at History Theater in March of '99. It's a play that I'm working on with one of my Hmong partners. She wrote a screenplay, asked me to adapt it to the stage, and then she's adapting it as well. So kind of together, and it's sort of a Hmong view of the Vietnam War. It's a Hmong soldiers' war story.
Working title for this yet?
Right now it's called Hmong, the CIA's Secret Army.
Well, that explains it.
Yeah.
Jamie, we're out of time. It's nice to have you on.
Thanks.
Continued
Thanks
good luck.
For inviting me. All right.
You bet. Now, still to come on Artifacts, Joe Horstcapture from the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And he'll be followed by a musical offering from the Youth Performance Company right here in our studio. Now stay tuned to Artifacts on City Cable 34.
I am the ghost of myself, haunted by 1,000 dying dreams and my shattering life. But I still breathe. And I still hope. And I still
Well, now that PSA for Catholic Charities was produced, directed, and shot by David Moe for Colossus Pictures. The advertising agency was Martin Williams. Well, I'm excited to have my next guest here. Joe Horscapture is an assistant curator at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and you have it's a long department over there. It's Africa, Oceania, and the Americas.
That's
Am I
correct.
right?
Yes.
Joe, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, I should disclose something, by the way, just in the interest of honesty here. I happen to be a trustee over there. I sit on the board there. But that's not why Joe is here. Joe, we've explained earlier in the show that in December we tend to have a conversation about sort of the intersection or the connection between art, generally speaking, and the spirit. And I know from a presentation I sat through that you provided a few weeks back that there's intrinsically some spirit that comes through a lot of art, and I thought we could maybe explore that in a few minutes. But for our viewers who aren't familiar with your department and what you do there, could you just explain a little bit about what a curator does at the Art Institute?
Well, my position, we have a lot of responsibilities, and it goes through many levels within the museum. Ultimately, we're responsible for the objects. We're responsible for how the objects are displayed, how they're interpreted, what objects we acquire, how we acquire them. And basically whatever happens to the object, in the end, we're ultimately responsible. We work on a lot of research, organizing exhibitions, as well as presenting the objects and working with other departments within the museum to take care for the objects, and also helping the visitor understand how the objects fit within the context which we're trying to provide.
I would have to say that's the best description of a curator I've ever heard.
Oh,
That's
really?
very
Thank
good.
you.
And I like how you started. I mean, ultimately you're responsible for the objects. I mean, that's the stuff with which you work. That's why they're there, that's why you're there, and why the people come in and see it. Can you describe a little bit about the collection that you're particularly involved in there, and give us some context for what people might see when they come to the Institute in your department?
Well, at the Institute, we are, within my department, we have three continents. We have Africa, Oceanic, which is Pacific Island, as well as the Americas. What we have done since we've done a reinstallation, this project just got over 10 years ago, is we've separated those within the museum. So they're very distinct galleries in different parts of the museum. If you were to visit the African gallery, which we just opened in the middle of, I guess earlier in the year, we have one of the, I think probably one of the 10 top collections of African art in the country.
Well, that's impressive. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we have well over 200 objects on display there, and we've divided it by a theme. So the idea is within Africa, traditional African life, there are many themes that fall within that life. And we have objects to try to represent those themes.
Okay, so that's the African galleries, as it were.
Right, and within the Pacific Island, which is Oceanic Gallery, we have tried to represent all the areas, Melanesia, Polynesia, as well as Micronesia, with objects, same style. And within the Americas, we have 4 galleries there, and we have tried to divide those into time. The first gallery is Introductory Gallery, which you try to explain how the native people live within their environment and what's important to them. Then the next gallery we deal with Art Before Contact, which some people call pre-Columbian. In the next gallery we go from Contact to 1900, which I think probably mostly the general public is more familiar with, is native art from that time period.
Well, and I go back at the Institute years and years ago when all of these sort of sub-departments were jammed together in a small introductory gallery almost, and now you have numerous spaces for each of these. When was your particular department, when did it expand? I know you mentioned earlier in the year for the African. When did the Americas expand?
Well, they had, out of this whole reinstallation project within the past 10 years, Americas was the first.
Oh, okay.
Out of our department.
Right.
And again, one of the things we try to do is you try to pay honor and respect to each one of our cultural groups, Africa, Oceanic, and the Americas. So Americas was the first. And in the last gallery in the Americas is contemporary art.
Okay.
And one of the things we tried to show is that Native people still create beautiful objects, and art is very important to their life.
Well, and you were nice enough to bring a few images, just a couple. I mean, this is hardly even a sampling, but can you just talk us through these 2 or 3 images that you brought?
Well, one of the things, at least my area of specialty is Northern Plains art. And when I was invited to come here, we were discussing how art and spirituality are important. And within Northern Plains cultures, it's difficult to separate the two. And the object which slide of which I brought is a shield, the Humble shield. That's the artist's name, his Crow, which is a tribe in southern Montana. And actually the real name they call him is Absaloka, which means people of the big beak bird.
The big beaked bird.
Big beaked bird, yeah. And so it's been anglicized to crow, but that's what they call themselves in their own native language, Absaloka. And I guess within the museum we always have, at least within my department, there's always some difficulty with, I wouldn't say difficulty, but sometimes objects become, they're art objects, but also they're objects from the culture. And how do you call it art? And also, where does the religion line stop and where does it begin? Within my department, many of them, there is no line.
Right, they're one and the same.
They're one and the same.
Yeah, there's a unity.
Right, and a good example is the shield. The shield is, the drawing on the shield, which is a buffalo, is actually when Humpwolf was a young man. The shield was made in the 1860s. When he was a young man, he went out to battle. And in this battle, he got separated from his band, and he was out wandering along, and there was a big snowstorm. And in the snowstorm, during the battle, he got shot in the leg. He was wounded. And so he said, geez, the snow is really coming down here. This is not good. I'm not going to make it out here.
Serious stuff.
Right. So as he was walking along the prairie, he saw a big, a big black object out in the middle of the prairie. And he went up and he felt it, and it was a buffalo. And he figured the only way I'm going to save myself is if I crawl inside this buffalo. So he takes out his knife and cuts open the buffalo and crawls inside. And inside of this buffalo is where he has his vision. And a vision, of course, is a way when the spirit world meets us, and they maybe will give us messages. And kind of taking a step aside, it's important to note how the buffalo is so important to traditional Plains culture. So it's interesting to note that when he has his vision, he's literally inside of what sustains their life.
Yeah.
And inside of this, when he was inside of this buffalo, when he had his vision, this buffalo man comes toward him, and he shows him the shield, and he says, if you make this shield, it will protect you throughout battle. So after the storm passes, he comes out, wanders back to camp, and he makes this shield.
I think I would do the same at that point. That's good.
So the object itself is, be used in battle for protection, but it's not what the object is made out of physically, which protects Humpwolf. It's a spiritual power which is embedded into the object.
Great example of what we're talking about there. Okay, other image?
The other image we have is a pouch, and it has a quill. It's porcupine quill. It's made out of porcupine quills. And it's an elk dreamer society. Now there's two aspects here to it. First of all, the idea of quilling. It's a Lakota, which some people call Sioux, but their real name is Lakota. That's what they call themselves.
Right, actually Sioux is not the nicest term, is it?
It's not the correct term.
Right.
They call themselves Lakota, and they have bands within the Lakota, which you get more specific. This, as far as we know, it's Lakota. We're not specific at the band because we don't really know. And in order for the Humpwolf would be more of a male example. The quilling is more of a female example. In traditional life, not everybody can sit down and just quill. You have to earn special rights, and you have to belong to the sacred society of women.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in order to learn how to quill, and they teach you how to quill because it's considered a gift from the Creator. In order to do it right, you have to reach a certain standard. So they belong to the sacred society of women who learn how to quill, and that's where some of the finest quill working comes from.
That may explain something that I've noticed. Every example of quill work I've ever seen has been excellent. And I've never seen shoddy quill work. Now maybe some of that is because of who chooses or when it's chosen to be on display. I suppose you tend to do that, but it would also lend itself to the fact that these are people who are specially honored and trained, I suppose, to do this work. That's great.
Yeah, it was a very secretive group of women, and they're very good at what they did. Very good.
Both of these objects that you've been discussing are items on display. Can people actually come in and see these?
Yeah, they're in the gallery right now.
Now, I would expect that, like most collections in an Institute of Arts this big, there's a small portion that's actually out on view, and there's probably a whole lot more in storage. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you describe your holdings?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do is, we keep maybe a case for maybe a year or less than a year. Then what we'll do is we'll rotate objects in and out. We'll take some out and put some we have down in storage up on display. So when people come to the museum, they can see what's there. And then we don't want them to be, well, we went to the Institute and that's it.
Right.
And it says no. Our galleries want them to be alive. We want new objects to always be out for more and more people to come and visit.
How about recent accessions? I mean, that's part of your job too. Anything new that you're excited about that you've been able to bring into the collection?
Well, from our Plains area, we just acquired a couple sketchbooks, which are very outstanding. They're reasonably rare. And those are on display now and have been working. One of the things we're trying to do at the Institute is to make it very user-friendly. is we have interactive video stations. Every department has interactive video stations, so you can go up and learn more about the objects. And we're just completing a project of adding, actually the shield is going to be in there. We're adding a pair of Chimu ear spools as well as those sketchbooks. So it's real fun, and I think when people come, they can learn about the object through the interactive video stations and then actually see the object in the gallery.
And this works for people of all ages, too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, kids will enjoy this just as much as older adults and things like that.
Yes.
I think another thing you've been involved in, if I'm not mistaken, publications. There are a couple of publications that your department's been involved in?
Yeah, well, when I was here, actually for an internship in '92, we had an exhibition called Visions of the People, which is all pictorial Northern Plains art, and we published a book for that. And also, I just worked on a book for National Geographic about sketchbooks.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that out now? People can go find that?
Yes, it's out.
I'll bet in the museum shop, probably.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
Well,
It's called Warrior Artists.
Warrior Artists.
Yeah, so within the department, we're always trying to keep busy. And there's a lot of work to do and a lot of real important
Oh, I
work
can
to do.
imagine. You're always busy there. One last question. We're just about out of time. Any upcoming exhibitions that are in the works? And I know in museums you're always working 6, 8, 20 months ahead. Anything coming up?
Well, right now within the museum we have an African doll show called Isn't She He a Doll, which has 211 dolls that closes January 17th. And next fall we have a show of Democratic Republic of Congo art, as well as next fall we have a large show called Chokwe, which is about African art.
Okay, Joe. If people want to call to get information about upcoming exhibitions at the Art Institute, there's a general number?
870-3000.
Okay, 3,000?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Joe Horscapture. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, Deep Magic. That's the name of the tune from Narnia that'll be sung by Martha Rossiter of the Youth Performance Company. Todd Price is on the keyboard. Enjoy. Now that was a song you're doing in the upcoming show Narnia.
Correct.
Is that right? And the Youth Performance Company is starting that when?
It starts December 4th and runs through the 20th.
Okay, and where do you do that show?
It goes on at the Howard Kahn Fine Arts Center on 19th and Nicolette.
Okay, and I know there's a phone number people can call if they want to get tickets.
Yeah, it's 623-9080.
Very good. And you play the White Witch. What kind of scary stuff?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good
very
show.
scary.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now stay tuned. Janet Zahn will be back with me to wrap up the show in about 30 seconds.
As the floodwaters rose, the Red Cross was there because help couldn't wait. Thanks to your contributions of time and money, the Red Cross served more than 1 million meals, sheltered 6,000 people, and helped another 52,000 put the pieces of their lives back together again. And because of you, Red Cross relief efforts continue today. Thank you.
That PSA was produced by one of my first guests, Lucinda Winter of Blue Earth Pictures. Director-editor was Jim Ankeny. Director of photography was Steve Fredrickson. And I want to say a special thanks to Lucinda and Dave Moe and the others whose work you saw on this edition of Artifacts. It was just really a small sample of how people in the film video industry give of themselves and do so much and such good work from the heart. I'm very proud to be a part of this industry.
They do good work, that's right. At this point in the show, we often do a little chit-chat here. I want to mention that Northern Clay Center is having their holiday exhibition and sale. That'll be going on through December 30th, and they're over on Franklin Avenue in the Seward neighborhood in South Minneapolis. The Kasanovich Dance Theater presents Divertimento. It's a studio concert of new works by choreographer Kristen Kasanovich, and that'll be December 7, 8, and 9, 8 p.m. each of those evenings at the Loring Playhouse Dance Studio. That's over between the Loring Park area and the Basilica.
Aha!
And some big news for us Artifacts types here. We've started taping a series of specials. So coming up in 1999, we're going to have, maybe 3 or 4 specials throughout the year. The first one's going to deal with the whole topic of cultural facilities. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can call the City Cable 34 hotline 673-2234.
And I want to mention one more time the HDTV seminar that's going to be held on Tuesday, December 15th at the Hilton in Minneapolis. Don't miss it.
Yeah, that's cutting edge kind of stuff.
Good stuff, yeah.
That's right. Now, Minneapolis artist, trivia hound, wit, and longtime gallery owner Robert Kilbride passed away in November. We got a hold of some admittedly silly kind of video recorded in April of 1983 in which Mr. Kilbride awards himself the MVP. Now, that's the most valuable painting award for the 29th year in a row back then. Star Awards was irreverently painted, written, and directed by Robert Kilbride, produced, shot, and edited by Mike Hazard. Here's a brief excerpt.
Gosh, Greg, I can sure see why he won.
You bet, Sally. You read his name, and I'll try to lift this tasteful award.
As you folks all know out in television, Bob Kilbride has won the same award for 29 years in a row. And if God willing, he wins it next year, he gets permanent possession for the few remaining years of his life. Bob? Hooray!
Yeah, Bob, you won! You won!
He won!
You won! Yeah, you won! Oh, yeah, oh, queer.
Please sit down. Please sit down. Sit down. No, it's embarrassing. All the beautiful people are here tonight honoring me with this elephant's foot for my bird on head. Foot to head. Not gonna. And have you ever seen Patty Olson and Sally Johnson looking more beautiful in their new gowns? Let's hear it for that, yeah. Isn't it wonderful that Olson and Johnson are back together again? You gotta be. First, I'd like to thank that three-legged jumbo in Africa for his foot, and I'll never forget. As a sensitive artist, this foot will never serve as an ashtray, a lamp base, or have a clock in the ankle. I love animals, and I believe in their dignity and preservation. But there's nothing wrong with a trophy on your wall or in your den.
Again, that was a bit of irreverence from the late Robert Kilbride, who passed away on November 9th. If you're curious and would like to see some of his paintings, they're still on display at the Groveland Gallery in Minneapolis.
Nice part of his legacy there.
Yes.
Now, at the end of our December show, we always roll a list of all the guests we've had on this year. So at the bottom of the show, you will see names, a whole bunch of names.
That's right. We've got our events calendar and a giveaway coming up.
Yep, our fabulous giveaway. And again, as usual, if you've seen anybody on the show or you've heard about a project that was going on that you'd like to find out more about, call us at the City Cable 34 hotline. That's 673-2234.
And that's the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. I'm Janet Zahn.
And I'm Phill Lindsay. Happy holidays to you folks.
The Artifacts giveaway for December, a 12-month showcase of the city, featuring practical, easy-to-use city information and stunning images of Minneapolis by acclaimed artist and photographer Stormy Greener. Call the City Cable 34 hotline, 673-2234, and if you're the 5th caller to leave your name and number on the answer machine, it's yours. Start out the new year right with a copy of this Minneapolis City Calendar for your home, or send it to someone who's far away from home. The number to call again is 673-2234.